Hey everybody, it's Beatdown on the Sherdog Radio Network. I'm TJ DeSantis along with Jeff Sherwood on a wacky Wednesday edition.
Sean has started a foundation, and he is going to talk about that. And to make it come full circle, his foundation is called Move2Improve, and to come full circle in the MMA world, because we're going to talk about him. And, not everybody will be that familiar with him, but
Right.
It's a very, very crazy, interesting story.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Daryl Golar, who, if you're an MMA fan, you should know who he is. If you don't, coming full circle, now Daryl is battling the same issues that Sean had. Daryl is now in a wheelchair.
Yeah.
Had a massive stroke. So Sean's foundation is looking to try and help Daryl out. So,
well, it's a noble cause.
About that.
Noble cause. I mean, Daryl Golar's contributed as a fighter as well as a coach in mixed martial arts, and if the community can kind of rally together to make his life better, that's a noble thing to do. So we'll get into that with Sean Entin.
Joining us now, MMA agent, philanthropist, Sean Entin. Sean, how you doing this morning?
Doing great. A former manager. I'm no longer an agent now, Jeff, but thank you.
Former manager. I did not say former. I'm sorry about that.
But yeah, I've been out of the game for about 10 years now, so it's been a little while.
Yeah, time flies. Let's go ahead and lay it out first. We talked about it a little bit earlier. Me and TJ did. About what we were going to be doing later when I talk to you. I will go ahead and say this now that I met you years and years ago when you were representing Mark Kerr.
Yes, sir. Yep.
How did that come about? I mean, how did Mark Kerr and you become a team?
We met at an event at Pride in Los Angeles here, and Mark and I started talking. And I'd watched him, back in the day on the old videotapes and whatnot, and knew who he was, and found out that he needed my help. And Mark was coming off of, I think, the Pride Extreme or some kind of, the World Series of Pride, and knew of him. He needed help, so I decided to start helping him, coaching him, managing him within his business world. And the next thing you know, he buys me a plane ticket, and I'm cornering him in Pride in Japan. I mean, literally days later, I'm there with him, figuring out the whole sport, realizing the UFC and Pride, and helping him along the way. And then, called you up, and then we met actually in my backyard, I think, for the first interview of Sherdog.
Yeah, it was definitely it was probably the biggest, the first, it wasn't the exact first, but this was the first time that I went out to a residence and sat there with the fighter one-on-one and did it. So yeah, this was definitely a big thing. I remember walking into your backyard, like being a little nervous.
Right. Yeah.
So it was it was definitely kind of an experience. And then I don't even remember where that was. What city was that in?
In Tarzana, California, in Los Angeles. Yeah. And at that time, I would say Mark Kerr was probably the pound for pound best fighter in the world at that moment.
Yeah, he definitely was a little intimidating, even though he was like the nicest guy, so soft-spoken, but definitely had that intimidating factor.
He was a specimen. I mean, the guy was a machine. He was unbelievable.
Yeah. Okay, so you get into MMA, and you start with Mark Kerr. Now, were there others?
Yes. Took along was Tim Sylvia. He was one of mine. I think Egan Enaway. I worked with a couple of them, but nothing as big as the Mark Kerr. And then it's funny you say that, because I remember when Dana White was still the boxing coach and called me up and actually asked me, what my thoughts were when Lorenza and the Fertittas were going to buy the UFC, and I told him to definitely do it. I was actually there when that thing happened, when I think it was Bob, I forgot his name.
Bob Marowitz.
Bob Marowitz sold it to the Fertittas, and Dana White was still a boxing coach for Chuck and Tito. And I happened to be in the middle of that. I don't know how I got there, but I think I was up there with Mark Kerr at Tito's training camp in Big Bear. And it was all happening at that moment.
Interesting. So you got in pretty deep pretty quickly.
Yes, I did. I was there with Lorenzo and Frank. Absolutely.
Now that seems a little weird with Mark being such a big Pride fighter then. I mean, what was it like with Pride? I mean, were you in with them as well pretty good?
Absolutely. Deep down with Pride. Very, very scary times. No, you know, at that time, you know, it was a free for all. It was like the you know, the old West. I mean, it was, you know, no limitations, you know, no paperwork, you know, no blood tests at that time, no, you know, no CT scans, you know, everyone showed up and beat the shit out of each other.
Right.
You know?
Now, were you a fan before all of this? I mean, you know, you said you met Mark in LA at a Pride event.
Yes, I was huge in that, Jeff. I was, I know, I'd go down to local video stores and you know, couldn't wait for the next UFC to come out and tape and watch them all, follow them on, you know, from Mark Kerr to Don Fries of the world to, you know, Dan Severin's, Mark Coleman's, and sure enough, I met, you know, at that time my idol Mark Kerr, and I was just in awe, and so I realized, you know, I know business, he knows fighting, so I combined the two, and we kind of just took off together.
Yeah, that's it. Back in the day, there was so many stories like that. You know, somebody that has a business background meets a fighter, sits down with them, and starts, you know, throwing out business stuff, and all of a sudden the fighter's like, "Man, you're kind of right. This is kind of a business. Maybe I'm doing things completely wrong." So, how easy was it for you to get in with Mark Kerr? You were probably totally in and within an hour.
Well, I mean, I was in so quick, but then I was on a plane the days afterwards out to Japan. And Jeff, I had no idea about Pride. I knew about the UFC, but I walked into this arena, you know, behind Mark Kerr holding his ice bucket in front of 70,000 people. I mean, it blew me away. I mean, I had no idea why I was even there. And next thing I know, I think he was fighting one of the Russians guys and took him down and pounded him out and, you know, won, and then dealt with, you know, Antonio Inoki and then his old group, and realized real quick that I was way over my head, and then came back to the States and figured out the game plan with the UFC and went to Abu Dhabi with Mark Kerr as well, where I think he beat Mario Sperry, and that was interesting enough, you know, too, as well.
Yeah, I'm looking at the timeline here of Mark's career. I'm guessing that was probably around Pride 10, which was 2000, and he fought Igor Borisov.
Exactly. You got it.
Yeah. Okay. And he won by neck crank that night. And I remember that. That was very something we didn't typically see in mixed martial arts. So how much help were you in the corner?
I was about to pass out. I mean, I was scared shitless. I mean, I didn't have a clue. I'm holding an ice bucket and watching these two men just beat the shit out of each other. And the next thing you know, Mark took him down and does his neck crank. I thought his whole neck was going to come off his body. So, I mean, you know, Mark comes back to the corner and I said, "You won?" And he goes, "Yeah, I won." And then I was like, "Now what?" So literally it started off at that moment. And then I went back to the dressing room with him and I said to Mark, we need to put this into a real business. And then we came back to the States and put together a real partnership and took it from there.
Now, are you as passionate for the sport as you were then?
Absolutely. Even more so. I love it.
All right, now let's get into your story a little bit. So here you are, your 40th birthday's coming up.
Yep.
At the time.
Yep.
And you decide, you know, you're around a lot of athletes and everything. You decide, you know, I'm going to get in the best shape of my life. I'm going to start training and work on myself and see how it goes.
You got it.
Take us through that a little bit.
One of my partners who I was training with was Dan Henderson. So he'd hand me up at his gym several times. I'd go up there and train with him and with Heath Sims and his whole group. And let alone, I'm not an athlete. I'm just an average guy who just happened to be good friends with Danny and followed Dan around his career and started training with him, not with him, but just his people, and fell in love with, you know, with the jiu-jitsu game and loved it. And, you know, I was never competing. I was just doing it just to get into shape, and I love the sport. And sure enough, I don't know, Jeff, you want me to keep going about the injury or
yeah, let's talk about that a little bit, because, you know, okay, we watch it on TV. We see people get choked out all the time. We know that Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is becoming kind of like a youth sport now, where like a soccer, basketball, baseball, there's so many kids going to jiu-jitsu class 3-4 times a week, getting choked out. So here you are training.
Yes, just training, exactly.
And you get choked out. Explain exactly how that went down.
Sure. I got caught in a side choke, or the Josh Barnett, side choke is what they call it. I couldn't tap out. I didn't know how to at the time, and it crushed my carotid artery, which caused, at the time I didn't know it. I thought it was just a bruise, and it actually tore my carotid artery that severed it so badly that it lost the blood and oxygen up to my brain, which caused me to have a brain bleed. That happened about 3 weeks post the injury, and then from there I had a full-blown stroke, which caused a 10-day coma and 3 years of rehabilitation and paralysis as well.
Now, how far along were you in the new fitness thing of you wanting to get in shape when this choke went down?
I was a blue belt. I mean, I was nothing. I mean, I was getting into great shape, and I was working out with Navy SEALs and the wrestling team and Hendo's team, and just loved it, and loved the sport, and just a freak accident. It was a freak accident, and it happened. It changed my whole life. I was on top of the world at the time, running a big company, several companies, and house on the beach, married at the time, 2 gorgeous kids, and the choke just changed my whole life. I mean, it caused a stroke, and then it caused me just to kind of rebirth from everything.
Now, you say a freak accident, because like I said, literally there's thousands of chokes going on a night now. I mean, when you think about it. Yeah. So what do you think the chances of something like this happening? Because there's so many chokes, there's so many high level athletes inside the octagon choking people out. We see them go out. What are the chances of this happening, again to somebody?
I don't know, the odds, but it can happen. It happened to me, but I just don't know. The odds are you apply a choke and you squeeze until he passes out. It's either what's called a air choke or a blood choke, and either one will cause a brain injury.
So, how long did it take you before you kind of put 2 and 2 together that this might have some ties with it, you getting choked out? Because you said it was 3 weeks after, correct?
Three, yes, you got it. So it's funny. It was Black Friday of 2011, so it's coming up again, my 3-year anniversary this year.
So take us through. So you get rushed to the hospital.
I basically, I'll give you step by step. I'll give you the play-by-play. I woke up on that morning, Black Friday. I actually thought I was hungover from wine, and sure enough, I was actually having a stroke. So I woke up, told my wife, "Hey, listen, I just don't feel well." And in front of the mirror, I turned gray. My face started to droop. I had no feelings on my left arm, and I passed out. And the next thing I know, I remember sequences of being in a helicopter and going from San Luis Obispo to Santa Barbara, and then waking up days post, them telling me that they're going to put me into a coma, and then from the coma, basically my brain bled so bad that it caused swelling. The brain was swelling that they had to take off my skull just to reduce the swelling, and then induce a coma as well. And then I woke up, paralyzed and in diapers, asking my father, what happened. And then when he told me, "Hey, Sean, you're paralyzed and you're in bed," I freaked the fuck out. Excuse my language, but yeah.
No, that's fine. I mean, definitely understandable. So, talk about. You said that it's going to be coming on 3 years.
Yes.
I watched your video.
Yeah.
And that was crazy, because I think maybe when you just kind of talk about it, you don't really think about it. But when I hear you say things like, "I had to learn how to go into the store and pay with cash again."
Exactly. I had to reboot my whole brain. My whole brain was cut off. Everything was shut down. My vision was off. My hearing was off. It just short circuited, and then I had to reboot it. So I had to reboot it in therapy. Lots of therapy.
How many people do you think have a stroke are actually strong enough to fully come back to where you are now?
All of them, if they have the therapy. If they don't have the therapy, they're not going to get better. It's just a fact.
Okay.
And yeah.
It's got to take a lot, though, for you to get out of bed,
Oh.
and not feel sorry for yourself and get caught up in that moment. I mean,
Absolutely.
talk about that a little bit.
It was so frustrating. I fought my demons for several months. I mean, I came back to Los Angeles in 2012 just to kind of rehab here with my parents, and it was horrific, Jeff. I mean, I was separated from my kids, and just had to heal, every day for hours every day, and just the brain needs to reboot, and hours on end, and having to trying to figure out my iPhone, trying to figure out the laptop, and getting frustrated. I couldn't drive. I couldn't put on my own clothes. Imagine being a 6-month-old child again. It's crazy.
Yeah,
and
that is,
yeah,
that is crazy. So, and now today,
yes,
you're still working on it today? I mean, you're still doing rehab today?
you got it. I travel, I look for the new rehabilitation centers. Left arm is still weak. I still walk with a limp. It's getting better. I'll be running soon, hopefully, shortly. I'll get back. I'll get better, but it's because of my therapy and it's because of my drive. Most people will give up or would have given up.
Right.
And and when I say I'm in the fight of my life, absolutely, every day I'm still fighting to get better. And now the fight has changed actually to give back and help others get their life back.
Right.
That's what I'm doing with my foundation.
So, would there ever be a point? I mean, if you were able to come back to a certain point, would there ever be a point where you would want to get back on a mat again?
Yes, I want my black belt, 100%.
Okay, that's interesting.
I
Now,
would love to go back. Absolutely.
With that being said, I mean, let's be honest. Everyone in the sport has dealt with Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu,
right?
Teachers, students, and they're all in.
Right.
Now,
Oh, yeah.
when some of these, I saw back when you did a story with Josh Gross on ESPN, I saw that when you said, that you were pretty sure this was from a choke, people kind of went after you. You upset a few people.
They came after me big time because nobody wants to talk about the dangers of the sport. I love the sport, but I'm here to educate the public and tell them, hey, here's what can happen. If you hold that choke on for too long, you can kill somebody. And not only kill somebody, you can permanently hurt them forever. I mean, it's a thing that, listen, you submit the arm or the leg, it's going to heal. You submit the neck or the throat and you fuck with the brain, you're not going to heal. It's permanent damage.
Right.
So that's the whole thing, is to educate people and make tell them what actually happened to me so I can teach them what not to do.
I find that interesting, though, after this long battle for you, that you're still saying, oh, I definitely want to get back on the mat and get my black belt.
Absolutely. I love it. It's, will I ever get my black belt? Who knows, Jeff? I still have so much to get back, but I'm one of those guys. I'm determined, and I'll tell you what who I am. They told me 3 years ago that I wouldn't walk for 5 years and I would never drive again. And I fired those therapists. You know what I'm doing? I'm walking now and I'm driving now. It's not pretty, but I'm driving. I got my license. I'm back to living a normal life. So when people tell me I can't do something, I'm going to do it. I'm going to push through it, and I'm going to make it happen.
Nice. So let's talk about your foundation now, the Move2Improve Foundation. How did this come about, and what what made you want to do this? Just obviously going through the situation yourself, but there had to be something or a few things that happened where you're like, you know what, something needs to be done in this area.
Absolutely. Yes, it is. I was in rehabilitation in San Diego and in Los Angeles, and watching, people who come through with no health insurance and no money, and they were sent home early. Insurance would drop them, and they left inside the wheelchair where I left walking. And my whole thing was, I got to make a difference. I've got to set the standard, and I'm going to build a charity that's going to fundraise for these people who have a brain injury, and I'm going to fund their full rehabilitation. I want them back to working again. I want them back to living a normal life. And without the rehabilitation, it's a slow process. I can't tell you never, but it's a slow process. It'll take them a lot longer to get back.
In a time in professional sports that we see so many head and brain injuries,
the concussions in football and soccer and NHL. and the NFL. I mean, it's tremendous. People just kind of brush it aside, but you'll see more and more injuries happening in the next years to come for sure. It's coming right now. A matter of fact, I mean, it's here every day. Every time
Yeah.
the brain gets hit, people think that, oh my God, the skull protects the brain. That's bullshit. The brain sits in water, and the skull is just some outer shell. When that brain when you get hit in the head, the brain's going to move and get shattered. It causes dark spots on the brain, which actually kills cells. And when you kill the cells, your brain's going to shut down, and then that controls the rest of the body.
Yeah, it's so scary. It's so scary having kids, that play football with youth sports, and my son now plays high school sports and everything. So yeah, things like that are definitely a concern for a parent and anybody. But tell people exactly how they can find out more about your foundation, how they can help you help people.
Okay, well, it's really easy. I mean, you can go to my charity. It's the Move2Improve Foundation.com. That's Foundation.com, or just go to my name, SeanEntin.com, and it'll take you right there. And then I've got several recipients right now. Jeff, I have a waiting list of 50 recipients. Majority of those are veterans. Believe that or not, the veterans, Marines, military, Navy. It's ready to get worked on. And that's the VA is not giving up on these people, but the process is so slow that I can help them immediately. I can get to them and work with them now. Where the VA is just way too slow. And I've got recipients, everything from a young girl who fell off her horse to my military friends who served overseas and who had suffered injuries. And the Rui zone that we're on is Daryl Golar. Maybe Jeff, you want to talk about Daryl for us, or tell him what you know about Daryl.
Yeah, definitely, Daryl. He's a MMA veteran. If you don't know who Daryl Golar is, you could go back on Sherdog and look at Fight Finder. He was a great fighter, a trainer. He's done everything in mixed martial arts, and I guess now I'm reading here that you sent me, Sean. It says December of 2013, at age of 52.
Yeah.
He basically had the same. He had a massive stroke like you, and his brain was swelling as well, and he kind of went through the same procedure. Where is he at now? How is he doing?
He's not doing good. He's at home in Houston. He's getting 1 hour a week of therapy. 1 hour. I get hours every day, so that 1 hour a week is not going to get him better anytime soon. So I've got a whole playbook to get him back to walking again. So he's still inside the wheelchair. And I can get him walking within the next year if I get funds to help him.
Mm-hmm. Now, when people go to your foundation website, your website, is there a donation there? Explain how people can help.
Donate to him. And the great thing is with us is that you can actually watch these recipients get better. Where so many charities, the money will go through several hands right into research. My money will go into that recipient. So Daryl will stay in contact with all the donors. You'll be able to watch him get better. I'll videotape the whole thing. He'll text, he'll connect with you guys, and you guys can actually watch him walk again.
Now, how did you find out about Daryl?
He was in Danny's fight camp through Heath Sims and then Dan Henderson.
Okay. And when he had the stroke, they contacted
on Facebook immediately, and then I called Daryl, started talking to him, started helping him as much as I could, and still help him. We still talk every day, of course. And I made a commitment to Daryl that I was going to get him better, and that's my commitment. I'll get him back. He's still a phenomenal wrestling coach. I mean, he was a mentor for so many kids. Dan Gable quoted him as having the best single he's ever seen. Mm-hmm. I mean, he was that good.
Yeah, definitely a veteran of the sport and been in there in all aspects of MMA. So now talk about your plan from here on out. Obviously, you said you would you're working, rehabbing every single day. Yep. What is a day like for you?
Oh, it's the morning. I get on the recumbent bike. I'll do as much weights, or a lot of it now. Jeff is is outside the clinic. I got released from the clinic last week actually, so now I can go into the gym all by myself. I'll take my trainers with me, and a lot of it now is just kind of reconnecting, the neural pathways. So a lot of it could be, bicycling, elliptical, spinning, that kind of stuff. I can't do much yoga yet, or because my left arm is still weak. But I still do a lot of therapy every day.
Mm. And what about your home life? Like, you said, I know that when I came to your house, you had a big house. You have 2 daughters, I believe, correct?
Yeah. So funny you say that. So the house that you came to, I'm living in right now. So I'm living with my parents. Had to take me in and rehabilitate me, and then my ex-wife and my kids are right down the street from us.
Okay.
So, yeah.
How hard is this for your kids? I mean, to go from first of all, how old were your daughters when this happened?
5 and 18 months.
5 and 18. So obviously the 5-year-old affected a little bit more. What was it like, coming back and having your daughters? Actually, that has to be a ton of motivation, right?
They kept me alive. You kidding me? I mean, they're the ones who actually were the power right behind me. So I mean, my little girls are just everything to me. I mean, the therapist told me to walk 5 feet. I walked 20 feet. They told me to go for 10 minutes. I went 20 minutes. It was all because of them. And my daughters are still there for me. I mean, it's just amazing what the inner power of one can actually do with with their children and being behind you.
When was the last time you went to an MMA show?
Oh, I saw Danny fight. It was I think it was Machito in Anaheim. Was it? I forgot. Remember that fight there? I think. Yeah, the fight was terrible. I mean, Machito just kind of ran away from Danny the whole time.
Right. So you still continue to be very good friends with Dan?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, definitely.
Okay. And let me ask you this. I don't want to totally get into it, but we brushed on it a little bit about the NFL, MLS, and dealing with concussions,
right.
head injuries.
Right.
We didn't even talk about UFC.
Right.
Let me just throw one question out to you, because this can be a whole other topic that we could probably talk about for hours. But say there's a fighter in the UFC. I don't want to put any names or anything, but say at the end of their career, all of a sudden they start having symptoms of traumatic head injuries or things like that.
Right.
Who do you think that needs to fall on?
On the organization. If it's the UFC, it's the UFC. If it's the NFL, it's the NFL. I mean, look at the NFL right now, Jeff. I mean, the lawsuit going on now, between the NFL and the players. I think something's got to happen with the organization. I think if you're fighting for, the UFC, I think the UFC should help these guys. The same thing, with Major League Soccer and the NFL as well. I can't point the finger, but someone's got to step up now and then help these guys. And I can't go into a conversation now with you, but I've seen these guys in my rehabilitation now, and they're still performing. They're still playing football. They're still fighting. I see it all the time. I watch these guys come through, and it's shocking to me that, hey, you mean you're gonna go put on pads again and a helmet and go play on Sunday, and you can't even speak your name. You can't even walk straight. I mean, they're punch drunk. They're vertigo. Their eyes are going to roll back in their head. And the same thing will go with the fighters as well. I know several of them. I'm not going to tell you who, of course, but, I know these guys.
How do you think this gets solved? I mean, do you think that, we talk about it on this show often. We talk about a fighters union and somebody there not directly involved that is helping these guys. We have big unions in the NFL, Major League Baseball. Do you think that a fighters union in mixed martial arts would help? And do you even think that that's ever possible?
I never even thought about it, but if it was to happen, I'll take that on. I would help them do it. I'm the perfect guy to do it.
Yeah, that's interesting, because the only problem is, we like I said, we talk about it often. The problem with a fighters union is you have to have everyone on board, which is hard to do because, you have big time fighters that make a lot of money. They also have to care about the fighters that are fighting on a card making $8,000, which doesn't typically happen.
Right.
So it would be a huge process, but I definitely think that at one point there has to be somebody to step up and try to move this forward. And I could see the UFC not really wanting it, not being crazy about it.
Of course not.
Yeah, but I think it would help them in the long run, though, as well.
Right. Absolutely. I just read something that Lorenzo, is now testing all these guys. They're giving them brain scans, blood work. I saw him, I think, on Fox, and that's great. But what happens to all these guys 10 years after they're retired? Where are they? Where's Fedor now? Where's Volchanchin now? How are these guys actually doing?
Right.
Right.
Yeah, we talk about that often on the show. Is what is it going to be like in 10 years?
Oh, it's going to be horrible, horrific.
Yeah, it's just starting to come out in the NFL now, which is, they I think they kind of brushed it under the rug a little bit for a long time, but now it's starting to get to mainstream media and people are starting to really see what happens. And I'm kind of scared mixed martial arts in 10 years. It's great right now to sit down and watch a fight and watch two guys get into the octagon and throw blows the entire time and take all this damage, and everyone loves it. The pay-per-view buyers love it. Dana loves it. Fans love it. They get a bonus. But in the end, what is that effect going to have on them in 10 years? Right. It's going to be kind of crazy. So
look at Muhammad Ali, Jeff. Look at Muhammad Ali. I mean, there's an example. I mean, Parkinson's, it's going to happen. I mean, these guys are going to get punch drunk, and you're going to see more Muhammad Ali's out there in the UFC world and the football world as well too.
What about when people say, though, Sean, well, they know what they're getting into?
There's a risk with everything, risk, a reward, but it's just what do you mean? Do you want to rephrase that question?
Like saying, well, it would be like me sitting here watching these guys beat the crap out of each other, and I love it as a fan or a I spend money on it and say, well, I'm not forcing these guys to do that. They know what they're getting into, so why should I really be worried about brain injuries of these guys? I mean, what do you say to people like that?
It's what they do for a living. I mean, you can't stop people from doing what they love.
Right.
I mean, but you should educate them and say, okay, here's what's going to happen if you do this and that. I mean, listen, if you go into a training camp and you get your head rocked over and over by guys like Hendo, you're going to feel it. The concussions are going to creep up. The concussions are minor seizures, and they're going to cause more. They can even cause a stroke. I mean, any which way you look at it.
Yeah, it's definitely a huge topic. It's definitely a huge. Somebody needs to come in somewhere and try and get something going, because definitely, I go into gyms, I see multiple people sparring all the time, and sometimes you'll see guys wearing headgear. A lot of times you'll see guys not wearing headgear. So it's definitely crazy, and I'm concerned because this is a sport I love, and I do become friends with a lot of these guys, and I'm definitely concerned for some of them, down the road. So,
and this is exactly what I'm doing. What I'm doing with my charity, with Move2Improve, because Daryl's my first one. You're going to see a lot more of Daryl's in the future with me. In the next 3 years, you'll see some big names who I'm now taking care of.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
It doesn't have to come from a stroke, but it'll be any kind of brain injury. You will see me rehabbing a lot of these guys.
Have you went to the UFC with your foundation and talked to the Fertittas or Dana about it?
Not yet. We'd love to do that though. That's on my agenda.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Well, it's been a long time since I've talked to you, and it's definitely been good. This talk and a lot of awareness, I think, and people could go to your website and check it out and help out. And I think this is definitely good for not just the sport of MMA. Obviously, this is an issue. Like you said, the girl fell off of her horse, but in MMA as well, to tie it in to Sherdog and here on Beatdown is this could be a huge issue come down the line for a lot of our favorite fighters that we watch put it on the line, fight after fight out there. So I want to thank you, and
thank you so much, buddy, and let's talk soon.
And there's definitely a lot more issues.
Just promote my website some more. Move2Improve Foundation.com would be great.
We will for sure. And if anything happens between you and the UFC or something like that, definitely, let us know, and we would love to hear about it. And
thank you. I'll give updates on Daryl too as well. I mean, you're going to watch. I mean, I'm going to raise him the money. I'm going to get him started with rehabilitation here shortly, and then I'll send you video clips. I'll send you posts. Hopefully Sherdog can then follow his progress.
Absolutely. We're going to work on it. We're going to work on a story, and we're going to definitely get this out and let people read about this and add your website in there and everything on how they can help.
Thank you so much, brother. Okay, bye.
All right. Take care, Sean.
And we're back to Beatdown here on the Sherdog Radio Network. TJ DeSantis back in your ears again. The familiar dulcet tones of Mr. Jeff Sherwood, who just got off the line, the GoDaddy hotline, with Sean Entin to talk about a variety of subjects. Obviously, brain injury, something that he's experienced, and kind of shed some light on why he thought his happened, and kind of makes you ponder about the possibilities of what these guys do that we admire on a daily basis, what it's actually doing to them internally, what it could be doing to them internally. And throughout that interview, sitting here, Jeff, I wasn't able to speak, but it was just very thought-provoking and a bit unsettling.
Yeah, it definitely makes you think about a lot of things differently. I mean, everything. I mean,
yeah,
just life in general, what we take for granted.
It's true.
I was thinking about the little things that he was saying. Like, if I was in that situation, I don't even know if I could come back from something like that. But what was crazy after all of this, and I asked him, do you ever want to get back on the mat again? And he's like, absolutely, I want to get my black belt.
Yeah, that's crazy. But I mean, that summarizes basically what a hardcore MMA fan is. Even something that nearly killed him and changed the way that he lives his life forever, that's not enough to stop him from getting his ultimate goal, which is a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.